y'all. So this is that memo from it's like a report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. It said declassified evidence of Obama administration conspiracy to subvert President Trump's 2016 victory and presidency. So this will be the second video of that. Pretty much, we're here on page 15. This is part of the report that was written. So here's the ICA. This was, I believe, the 2016 version. Yeah. And then cyber threats to the 2016 US presidential election. But if you watch the first video, you'll see where they were writing emails back and forth saying there was no Russian collusion, or they didn't see any evidence that they had actually hacked or interfered in the elections. But anyways, his intelligence community assessment, 12th of September 2016. This intelligence community assessment was prepared for the National Intelligence Council under the auspices of the National Intelligence Officer, or NIO, for cyber issues. It was drafted by the NIC, DHS, and CIA with contribution from the CT, IIC, and coordinated with DHS, FBI, CIA, DIA, NGA, NSA, and state INR. Questions about this assessment may be directed to the NIO on secure redacted or unsecure redacted. And of course, they redacted a bunch of stuff here. Yeah, sources and methods, that's what they tell you. Okay. So, cyber threats to the 2016 U.S. presidential election, key insights. We judge that foreign adversaries do not have and will probably not obtain the capabilities to successfully execute widespread and undetected cyber attacks on the diverse set of information technologies and infrastructures used to support the November 2016 U.S. presidential election. We have only moderate confidence in our overall threat assessment. And all that's redacted. This is redacted. The most likely cyber threat to the election is from low-level detectable cyber intrusions and attacks that cause localized disruption but do not threaten the overall functionality of the election services or infrastructures. Nonetheless, even the perception that such low-level intrusions and attacks have occurred risks undermining public confidence in the legitimacy of the electoral process, the validity of the election's outcome, and the mandate of the winning candidate. We further assess that foreign adversaries are more likely to focus election-related cyber operations on undermining the credibility of the electoral process than on clandestinely manipulating the vote outcome through cyber means. We judge that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea can execute a variety of disruptive cyber attacks, including data corruption, distributed denial of service, and even data modification on some election infrastructure. Depending on the adversary's level of access and the targeted system's vulnerabilities, some nation states and non-state actors could probably corrupt or deny many online election services, modify or delete entries in internet-connected voter registration databases, and corrupt some electronically cast or tabulated votes in some voting precincts. Adversaries might also target the most contested or decisive locales and voting blocks in order to maximize the psychological impact of cyber attacks. Although unlikely in a perfect storm, a cyber adversary might be able to target a small number of critical counties and highly contested states with significant numbers of electoral college votes, potentially altering the apparent outcome of and almost certainly undermining public confidence in the election. We judge Russia has conducted cyber and intelligence operations that suggest that it has potential interest in disrupting the U.S. presidential election. The Kremlin's cyber penetration of a U.S. political party's servers and the timing of the probable subsequent lack of stolen data suggests that Russia is motivated to exploit the period surrounding the U.S. presidential election either to try to shape the U.S. political environment or to advance other Russian interests. For example, Putin might simply wish to make the U.S. electoral process appear illegitimate or to undermine the legitimacy of the president-elect in order to strengthen Moscow's hands. We judge that although it has the means to do so, China is unlikely to publicly release any materials that it might have collected from campaigns or candidates, and that it will probably not attempt to influence the outcome of this presidential election via cyber means. We make this judgment with low confidence. So is it or isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, what the heck? So contents, clandestine, widespread manipulation. We'll just keep going here. Moscow's efforts to manipulate foreign elections. Okay. So scope note, information available as of 8th of September 2016 was used in the preparation of this product. This ICA addresses the period between 8th of September 2016 and 9th of November 2016. Judgments might be revised during this time frame if our understanding of adversaries' capabilities and intentions significantly change. This ICA assesses the threat from and likely objectives of cyber attacks conducted by foreign state and non-state actors against the 2016 U.S. presidential election. This paper does not provide a comprehensive overview of all cyber-enabled efforts to influence U.S. or foreign voter perceptions. By influence, we mean an attempt to shift perceptions of a target group, sow doubt, and a loss of trust in targeted social and political institutions, or affect the change in behavior or action of a target group. Additional IC products addressing this issue include Redacted, ODNI Spring 2015, Cyber War, Net War, and the Future of Cyber Defense. Document is unclassified. This is redacted. Assumptions. The cybersecurity of IT systems used in the 2016 presidential election will be at best comparable to the security of federal government IT systems. No responsible entity will make any significant change that affects the connectivity of the domestic internet infrastructure and the global internet. And U.S. policy regarding responses to cyber attack will not significantly change. Estimative language. Estimates of likelihood convey judgments about the probability of developments or events. Confidence levels provide assessments on the quality and quantity of source information, and the Annex D, or estimative language, elaborates on these terms. We have moderate confidence in all judgments except as otherwise noted. Cyber threats to the 2016 U.S. presidential election. We have no indication that foreign adversaries are planning to manipulate or sabotage computer-enabled U.S. election infrastructure. We assess that foreign adversaries, most notably Russia, probably expect cyber operations against U.S. election infrastructure to be more effective in undermining the legitimacy of the process and the winning candidate than in covertly manipulating the vote outcome. Although many adversaries are capable of detectable, disruptive cyber attacks against computer-enabled U.S. election infrastructure, it is most likely beyond the means of our adversaries to use cyber attacks to affect a covert and widespread shift of the recorded votes to decisively favor a particular candidate during the 2016 U.S. presidential election. This is not because adversaries lack considerable capabilities, but because the U.S. electoral process is a highly decentralized, procedurally and technologically diverse activity, and because the will of the voting public is itself dynamic, shifting up to the day of the election. These factors would make it difficult, although not impossible, for even highly capable adversaries to identify and target enough ultimately decisive critical nodes in advance. Clandestine, widespread manipulation of election results likely beyond capabilities of adversaries. Key judgment one, we judge that foreign adversaries do not have and will probably not obtain the capabilities to successfully execute widespread and undetected cyber attacks on the diverse set of information technologies and infrastructures used to support the November 2016 U.S. presidential election. We have moderate confidence in our overall threat assessment. Something has been redacted. It says experts at a June 2016 conference responded by the U.S. government, sponsored by the U.S. government to analyze cyber threats to e-democracy, suggested that the decentralized nature of the U.S. election system is a potential source of strength. Although lamenting that the United States lacks centralized standards for its voter registration and voting systems, the experts asserted that the diversity of existing technical solutions, as well as the decentralized nature of the systems and the election process, create resilience. No single technical solution has been adopted across the entire country. Instead, approaches differ widely across different localities, even within states, resulting in decentralized voting procedures in a variety of machines. As a result, the potential impact of system-specific cyber exploits would probably be limited, and an adversary would need to compromise multiple systems in multiple locations to alter outcomes in the national election. These experts further concluded that data from legitimate elections generally exhibit statistical characteristics that can be measured against other elections, enabling detection of fraud in the weeks following an election. Anomalous voting behavior is not always an indicator of fraud, and hiding some signatures of fraud is possible if the fraudster is aware of the signatures in question. However, experts believe that it would be difficult to conceal the full range of anomalies that a large-scale manipulation of votes would generate. Cyber operations against electronic voting machines, particularly those that do not provide a paper record of individual votes for auditing purposes, would be the most effective way to manipulate the votes without being detected, according to research by other academic and industry experts. These systems are usually not connected directly to the internet, however, and to affect them would require physical access, supply chain compromise, or insider-enabled operations. The resource-intensive nature of such operations would make them difficult to conduct on a large scale. System diversity and existing safeguards will be likely to prevent the undetected manipulation of election results, according to DHS. However, multiple technical pathways exist to undermine public confidence in the electoral process. These include manipulation of voter eligibility lists, exploitation of electronic voting systems that lack voter verified paper audit trails and comprise of election night reporting systems. Low-level detectable attacks pose most likely threat. Key judgment 2, the most likely cyber threat to the election is from low-level detectable cyber intrusions and attacks that cause localized disruption, but do not threaten the overall functionality of the election services or infrastructures. Nonetheless, even the perception that such low-level intrusions and attacks have occurred risk undermining public confidence in the legitimacy of the electoral process, the validity of the election's outcome, and the mandate of the winning candidate. We further assess that foreign adversaries are more likely to focus election-related cyber operations on undermining the credibility of the electoral process than on clandestinely manipulating the vote outcome through cyber means. Adversaries interested in decreasing voter confidence might be encouraged by the open and questioning of the cybersecurity of the upcoming U.S. election based on numerous news and editorial reports in major media outlets globally since summer of 2016. Historically, Russian, Iranian, and North Korean operators who engage in cyber-enabled influence operations focused on maximizing media reporting on an incident in order to discredit or undermine victims. Growing public concern over the vulnerabilities of the U.S. election systems would probably feed potential sensationalized coverage of even local, low-level cyber attacks. This can enhance the impact of even low-level intrusions that are detected and publicized. Cyber activists, might attempt disruptive cyber attacks such as distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks or web defacements in the lead up to and potentially during voting process. We judge that even without linkage to any plan or intent to disrupt an election, criminals will continue to use cyber means to steal voter registration data, given previous operations targeting bulk personally identifiable information. The compromise of voter registration data, even for petty criminal purposes, could be leveraged by other actors seeking to disenfranchise a body of voters via cyber means. In addition, in its early stages, criminal compromise might be indistinguishable from an effort to disrupt and might be portrayed as evidence of registrant manipulation, even when no manipulation actually occurred. A variety of perpetrators, from nation-state adversaries to novice domestic cyber criminals, might use some of the same cyber attacks, techniques, and procedures. Because of this, indications of a cyber attack during the election in isolation would not necessarily be the result of foreign interference. Targeted attack within the reach of many adversaries. Key judgment 3, we judge that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea can execute a variety of disruptive cyber attacks, including data corruption, distributed denial of service, and even data modification on some election infrastructure. We further assess that almost all current and potential cyber adversaries, nations, criminal groups, terrorists, and individual hackers now have a range of capabilities to exploit and in some cases attack unclassified access controlled U.S. and allied information systems via remote penetration from the internet. We have high confidence in our judgment based on a body of reporting that reveals adversaries' abilities to penetrate and manipulate a wide variety of U.S. systems. USIC and law enforcement organizations are currently analyzing successful cyber intrusions into 2 state election networks and attempts into at least 3 others that have occurred since mid-2015, see Annex A. We do not know the identity of the perpetrators, and at this time, we are aware of only the theft of data, not data deletion or modification. As a result of these incidents, these intrusions, foreign interest in election association or associated PII, and the demonstrable vulnerability of the related systems all suggest there is a significant risk of additional incidents. Historically, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea have been able to compromise a wide variety of the internet-connected federal government networks despite U.S. cybersecurity efforts. Because we assume that the cybersecurity of IT systems to be used for the 2016 is comparable to the cybersecurity of federal networks, we judge that with sufficient preparation and systems access, our adversaries probably could corrupt or deny many online election services and systems. Services that could be attacked during the election include information on poll location, status, and closing times, as well as the post-election calculation of results Adversaries could also preemptively modify or delete entries in networked voter registration databases, and if vulnerable IT systems weren't employed, corrupt some electronically cast or tabulated votes in some voting precincts. Alaska, which allows submission of online absentee ballots from an Alaskan voter, might be a particularly attractive target. Adversaries might attempt a DDoS attack to prevent the upload of ballots, seek to corrupt data in the internet's domain name servers or DNS, or routing tables, or direct would-be voters to non-existent or fraudulent websites, or to manipulate the vote through man-in-the-middle attacks or by compromising the voter servers. Although such efforts will probably ultimately be detected, they might disenfranchise significant numbers of voters. In addition, even unsuccessful attacks would erode confidence in the election process, providing opportunities to adversaries to cast doubt upon the legitimacy of both the process and results. Despite the diverse nature of the computer-enabled U.S. election infrastructure and the difficulties associated with the anticipated decisive tipping points in advance, in cases where an election is decided by a few closely contested areas that also employ vulnerable technologies, a targeted cyber attack on these locations might have significant impact on public confidence in the election, or even actually be able to shift the overall outcome. If a perfect storm of coincident political and technological sensitivity were to develop, a cyber adversary might be able to target a small number of critical counties in highly contested states with significant numbers of electoral college votes. This could potentially alter the apparent outcome of, and ultimately, or almost certainly, undermine public confidence in the election. Although we understand this scenario is unlikely, it remains a possibility we cannot discount. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm having trouble reading. But anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.